Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's webinar, Explore the National Science Foundation's SBIR STTR program. I'm Rebecca Todd, your moderator this morning. I work as Innovation Specialist for the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center. We are taxpayer funded to provide confidential one-on-one consulting, training, and market research services for entrepreneurs and established businesses across the state. We have been working in Arkansas for over 40 years, and we have 9 regional offices throughout the state that allow us to help entrepreneurs and established companies. Most of our regions have at least one university-based center, and we also have 4 more that will be opening up in the near future. Through our center's competitively awarded federal and state technology grants, the ASBTDC is able to offer continued outreach through events such as this webinar to share events about the SBIR STTR program for statewide and national audiences. We help entrepreneurs with each step of preparing and submitting small business innovation research, or SBIR, proposal applications, as well as state-level applications for supplemental technology commercialization funds. To date, our clients have won 74 SBIR and STTR awards across the participating agencies, including National Science Foundation. Through our industry database subscriptions, we can also help to locate market data to help our clients prepare key sections of their SBIR STTR proposals, like the commercialization plan. Everyone who has registered for today's event will be receiving a copy of the slides, as well as a link to the recording within 2 days. And you'll get this through GoToWebinar email. So before we start, let's take a moment to make sure that everyone is ready and familiar with GoToWebinar. First, you should have a control panel in the right side of your screen. You can minimize this panel by clicking on the arrow button, which is orange. That's in the upper left corner. And you can expand the panel by clicking on that same button. So take a moment to practice this. And second, you have the ability to submit questions using the question pane, which is located near the bottom of the control panel. So please do submit questions throughout today's presentation. We'll have time dedicated at the end for Q&A with our presenter, Henry Ahn. So before we get started, I do want to go ahead and introduce today's speaker, Henry Ahn. Henry joined the National Science Foundation in July of 2016 as a SBIR STTR program director. Prior to joining the NSF, Henry managed seed and early stage investment programs for TEDCO for 12 years. And this included Technology Commercialization Fund, TEDCO's flagship seed funding program for technology-based companies in Maryland. During his time at TEDCO, Henry was actively involved with various entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial support groups as a guest speaker, an advisory board member, a judge, and a mentor, among others. Additionally, Henry was part of the licensing supplier relations team at a biotechnology company called Upstate. Here's where he successfully negotiated, licensed, and commercialized approximately 190 biomedical research reagents from around the world. Henry has also done approximately 5 years of research, mostly in the field of immunology. Henry has an MBA from Rice University, an MS in biotechnology from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and a BS in biomedical engineering from Boston University. So with that, I'll now turn the presentation over to Henry. Take it away, Henry.
All right, thank you very much, Rebecca. So again, my name's Henry Ahn. I mostly manage the 2 topics under the biomedical technologies and medical devices within our SBIR STTR program. So let me, hold on 1 second, let me go to the next slide. NSF by the numbers. So NSF is primarily a funding agency with approximately $8.3 billion in annual budget. We go through and evaluate approximately 41,000 proposals annually, and we fund roughly 1,800 institutions, and this includes all the for-profit companies that we fund. I think for for-profit companies, it translates to roughly 400 companies annually. And most of these funded institutions are academic institutions. Number of awards, roughly 11,300 awards. So basically, we do go through many proposals every year as a funding agency. All right, so NSF basic research, approximately $8 billion. And I think most of you probably remember the picture of black hole that came out a couple of years ago. This was really a big deal within NSF. This NSF funded research resulted in an image that no one's ever seen before. It was a big deal, but as you know, this is probably not the type of project that we would fund under the SBIR STTR program. Our division within NSF, it's Division of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships, and we primarily deal with translational research. It has to have some commercial applicability before we actually do get involved. So these are the programs that we offer within our division. SBIR STTR program is the biggest funding program that we have within our division, roughly $200 million a year. And I-Corps, and I think that program has gained a lot of popularity over the past several years. I go to some business plan competitions, and it seems like some people know more about I-Corps than SBIR. But this is a customer discovery exercise for people to understand the market potential of the technology that they're trying to develop. So before they spend the money to develop the technology, it's just trying to figure out whether the market need is there before proceeding with it. The other funding programs that are listed, these are academic funding programs. Money going to the university research lab to do some translational research, and some of these projects may result in an SBIR application, a potential spin-off of a university, resulting in an SBIR proposal. So all the companies that apply for funding through NSF, they have to go through phase 1 first. Phase 1 provides $256,000, and companies that successfully complete phase 1 can move on and apply for phase 2. And phase 2 companies can apply for supplemental funding programs. The biggest one that we have is phase 2B, going up to $500,000. That's a matching fund for investment that the company is able to raise in equity or safe investments, or in some cases, commercial revenue. We will match for every $2 that the company brings in, we will match $1 going up to $500,000. So when it's all said and done, it will be slightly under $2 million. And actually, we do have other supplemental funding programs for phase 2 companies. It's a bit less than phase 2B. Some supplements go up to about 20% of the phase 2 award, and some a bit less. And I know other agencies have other kind of more creative programs where companies can go directly to phase 2 or go through a combined phase 1 and 2. We don't have those type of programs. So all the companies that go through NSF pretty much have to go through phase 1 first, and then phase 2. Once awarded with phase 2, those companies can potentially look into and apply for these other supplements, including phase 2B. Oh. All right, so it looks like. All right, so to qualify for SBIR STTR, and this is the basic qualification for the program, set up as a for-profit company, fewer than 500 employees, and this is a federal definition of a small business, located in the US, at least 51% owned and controlled by US individuals, and this means US citizens or permanent residents. So when we look at this definition, I mean, these are still companies can be very large and still be able to be at least eligible to apply for SBIR. But when we look at the numbers within NSF, the companies that we fund tend to be very small. And we've even changed our logo not long ago to say America's Seed Fund. So this truly is a seed funding program. Looking at the numbers, about 90% of these companies have never received SBIR phase 1 or 2, phase 2 from any agency. If we look at just a phase 1, it's roughly 75%, first time SBIR STTR winners. 85% of them had 5 employees or fewer, 72% found it in the past 3 years. So when we look at these numbers, you can see that most of the companies that we fund through phase 1, they're very early, usually working on their initial core technology, whatever that may be, and they're just trying to get established. Many of them are startups, and they get formed just for the purpose of going through this SBIR program. Looking at our portfolio since 2014 through early part of 2020, we've had our companies raise approximately $9 billion in follow-on investment, mostly through equity. There have been 107 successful exits, and these were mostly through mergers and acquisition. Looking at the topic areas, you can see that we funded about 26%. This is data from fiscal year 2018, so it is a few years old. But looking at the data, you can see that we've funded approximately 26% in the information technology space, 24% life sciences, and these are just percentages. And one thing to keep in mind is that these are not our target percentages. It just happened that that year, fiscal year 2018, when we received all the proposals and went through and awarded all the proposals that we thought were strong, it just ended up being that 26% were under IT and 24% were life sciences. And obviously we did receive just many more proposals under those topics than other topics. But one thing that I really wanted to show with this graph is that we fund just about every technology. So we're probably the only agency where we're technology agnostic. So we're the only agency where the topic fit really is not that important. So if you do approach other agencies like NIH and DoD, they have a lot more funding than we do under the SBIR program, but you do have to make sure that the topic fit is there, that these are the technologies that they want to see. With NSF, since we fund just about every innovative technologies, the fit is not that important, but what's important is being able to commercialize the technology and be able to grow as a for-profit company. This is our website, seedfund.nsf.gov, and I think if you're thinking about submitting a proposal to NSF, this page is probably going to be the most important page that you need to get to first. And if you look under the resources, you can go to the for applicants section. We do have some recorded webinars and other resources for potential applicants. And we have some information for current awardees, some of the reporting requirements and how to navigate through our system. For reviewers, that's another important area. This is an area where our reviewers can look at all the solicitation guidelines, some of the questions that they will be asking or should be asking themselves as they review the proposal. So that page should also be important or valuable for companies that are thinking of submitting a proposal. It'll give you a glimpse into what reviewers are asked to do. But another page that's probably maybe even more important than this is the apply button right here, or get started button. This leads to our timeline. So when companies start to look into applying for funding, how to apply along with the long timeline, I only have the first 3 points there, the first 3 steps, but the timeline is much longer if you go to our website and scroll down. And the 4th step on this page is probably the first really actionable item for companies that are thinking about submitting a proposal. That's where you can find a link to our project pitch portal. You can go in there and submit your project pitch. And we do have other timelines. And if you go all the way to the bottom, although I can't scroll down on this page, we also have a link to our fast lane guideline. It'll walk you through step by step, including some of the images of the web pages, and let you know exactly what type of information that you need to include and submit along the way as you put together the full proposal. So getting started, the first step again is the project pitch. The project pitch portal, going back to that page, again, this is step number 4 on that page. The project pitch, it's generally very brief. It has just 4 text boxes, and yes, we do accept images within the box, and it's just telling us who the company is, and what the market potential might be, and what the innovation might be for the technology that's being developed. And the purpose here is to just look for the fit within the program. And the company is not really going through any type of review at this point. So for example, if a company comes in and they say, hey, we would like to conduct clinical trials, and NSF does not do clinical trials, one of the few things that we do not do. And when we see that, we can go right back to the company and say, hey, we don't do clinical trials, so it's not a good fit. And at that point, the company does not have to worry about spending all that time putting together the full proposal, because that's when the real work actually starts for the company, putting together the full proposal. It's very time consuming, going through the solicitation guideline and all. So it's just main purpose here is to make sure that there is a fit, and if there is, if the fit is not there, then we can let the company know that they should not be spending all that time putting together the full proposal. And as a result of it, by the way, the company can always come back and have another discussion. If they have another project that they have in mind, the project pitch is reviewed, by the way, by whoever will be handling that topic. And when the project pitch is submitted, also just don't worry about the topic fit. If you believe that it's the best fit is under medical devices, please go ahead and submit it there. And everything's linked. And all of our SBIR program is within the same umbrella. So when it gets submitted to medical devices, I'm usually the one that'll go in there and review. And when I review, and if I feel that it's better under the digital health technologies, for example, I will transfer it to digital health. And when the company hears back, it will be from digital health, and they'll know exactly who reviewed it and who to reach out to if they have questions. So if it gets transferred to digital health, for example, it's Alistair Monk within our program, and he will be listed as a point of contact. So if the company does have some additional questions along the way, they can reach out directly to Alistair Monk to get the questions answered. And once invited to submit a full proposal, and going from step 4, step 5, and then step 6 actually has links to our solicitation guideline. And that solicitation guideline has very detailed information and guideline on what type of information to include in the full proposal. But basically, our reviewers work with three different criteria: intellectual merit, broader impact, and commercial potential. The intellectual merit refers to the technical side, anything that relates to the technology. Is the company working with innovative technology? Do the technical milestones make sense for a $256,000 project? Or are they trying to de-risk the technology? What will completing that those technical milestones mean for the company? Does the company have enough technical capability to do the work? Now, broader impacts generally refers to any potential societal impact or increasing economic competitiveness within the US. And these two criteria are identical throughout NSF, whether somebody is submitting under the university, or from the university, or from as a company. These two criteria are identical. But because we work with for-profit companies, our group being, our SBIR STTR group being the only group within NSF working exclusively with for-profit companies, we do have to worry about the commercial potential. And this is almost like a mini business plan. Does the company understand the market potential? Is there a market need? Do they understand who the competitors are, what the competitive advantage might be? Does the team have enough expertise on the business side? Or if not, do they have advisors that can guide them along the way? So anything that relates to the commercial side will go into this commercial potential. And I know Rebecca mentioned a few days ago about our solicitation guideline potentially being a little different. So these criteria have pretty much remained the same for many years now. But I think what ended up happening was maybe about a couple of years ago, we had the broader impact and commercial potential kind of combined. So when we reviewed proposals, we used to do all the technicals under intellectual merit, and then all the business-related matters under broader impacts. But we realized within our office that we have to be more in line with the rest of the agency, NSF, looking at the specific broader impacts that are a little different. So we decided to just separate everything out. So we have 3 different criteria, and sometimes I do get questions from companies asking, what's more important? Is the technology, innovative technology more important, or is the business side more important? And I would say they're all important, and the important thing is the money that we provide the company, they have to be able to achieve some early technical work, and hopefully it will get them to perhaps the next inflection point where they can approach other investors or maybe strategic partners and be able to continue to grow the company. Sometimes the technical side may have some issues, and sometimes it's on the business side. Sometimes it's both. So I think these are all important. Ultimately, we want to be able to give early stage companies a chance to be able to continue to grow. So whenever a company can make that case that this money will get them to a meaningful place and give them the chance to continue to grow, I think that the justification for SBIR is pretty much there. Our review process, generally, after the proposal gets submitted, within about 3 months or so, the panel meets to discuss the proposal and review the proposal thoroughly. And sometimes we may come back and go through some additional due diligence. So our goal is to get to the final decision on funding within 4 to 6 months from the time of proposal submission. And if everything goes well, applicants can expect to start the project roughly 6 months after the proposal gets submitted. And what do we fund? So again, the innovative, novel, proprietary technology, and that's important because NSF is all about helping companies get over some significant technical hurdles. And the phase 1 project is mainly to prove feasibility or viability of the new product. And these are generally associated with very high risk, very high technical risk, because they're all very early stage in terms of development. And we do look for technologies that can potentially be a game changer within the market. And the market fit obviously has to be there. And I think this is where the I-Corps can really help. Companies that go through I-Corps, they sometimes have this third-party validation that the market need is really there for the company to be able to address and potentially grow as a for-profit company. So what do we not fund? We don't do basic research. I briefly mentioned about the black hole research that was done funded by NSF. Some basic research that can just potentially add important knowledge to the field, but may not have any commercial potential or commercial application. Those are not the type of work that we fund. Incremental improvement to an existing product. So if a company has built the technology already and they want to, for example, use the same technology for another application, so that may be considered just an incremental improvement to what may have already been developed. And projects where there is no commercial potential to the technology, because companies will have to be able to grow the technology. It really doesn't make any sense for us to fund a product that can potentially help generate $100,000 a year for the company, or the market potential is just that. It will be very difficult to sustain as a for-profit company. And all the money that we provide has to go toward technical work. So any non-technical work, such as market studies, cannot be funded through this SBIR program. And what are some of the important elements? And this is something that I put together because I think these issues get discussed quite a bit during the review process with the panel. So kind of listed them for people to think about. I mean, but all of these things can be found within the solicitation. So when a company is going through this full proposal preparation, going through the solicitation guideline carefully is probably going to be more important, but these are just pointers for companies to think about along the way. And also one other thing is, if a company is submitting to multiple agencies, never repurpose a proposal for another agency. I sometimes see a proposal that's apparently, I mean, they submit it to NIH, they say they submit it to NIH based on the cover page, and the proposal just looks like an NIH proposal. You know, we generally do require significantly more commercial information than some of the other agencies, and many of my reviewers also serve for other agencies as reviewers. Sometimes our reviewers will say, "Hey, this is a proposal that they probably submitted to NIH," and immediately the proposal kind of the review process starts on the negative side, negative note, which is never a good thing. So these are some points, evidence that the technology works. For phase 1 applicants, technically supporting data is not a requirement, although many of the phase 1 companies do come in with some supporting data, especially some companies that are coming in with some strong technical info. But the minimum requirement is that the company submit a proposal along with some evidence that the technology works. It could be based on other people's work, maybe through literature search. There might be something that suggests that what the company is trying to do will probably work, or it could be based on a theory. So that's the minimum requirement. An understanding of the initial target market, need, and commercialization strategy to go along with it, and that's also very important. When a company is working on, and especially on a platform that has a much broader application, sometimes we see a proposal that says, hey, we're going to build this. It has all of these different applications, and we will be able to target many different markets simultaneously, and it becomes very difficult. Companies should really have their initial target in mind, and that market should be described much more in depth. How big is that market? Why would they use this technology within that market? Who are the competitors, and why is this technology significantly better? And all those things can be described much more in depth when there is that initial target. And then companies can also mention that there are these other potential application for the technology. Having additional application, I mean, that's always a good thing, but having that initial target is important. It shows that the company is focused and perhaps be able to address the needs a little better than not having that focus to start with. Intellectual property and the strength of intellectual property. For the topics that I handle under the medical devices and biomedical technologies, this generally means patents. Does the company have something that's protectable under patents? Do they understand what it is? Has the company taken the steps to protect the IP, such as by filing a provisional patent, for example? So that's kind of the minimum requirement. But if this is a software company, patents may not be all that important in some cases. So the important thing here is whatever the intellectual property is, how will the company continue to compete in the market? Is this relatively easy to reverse engineer? If it is, well, how will the company be able to compete? If there's money to be made, there will be people coming and trying to replicate and trying to make money from the technology that the company may develop. So there has to be something that shows that the company understands what the intellectual property is and what the strength of that intellectual property might be. There has to be a significant competitive advantage. It can't just be as good as something that already exists. I mean, that may be good, for example, for going through the FDA clearance, for example, but to compete in the market and come out ahead, there has to be something that says, yes, this is significantly better and people would use this. Regulatory path to market, this is applicable mainly to the companies that I work with. If the FDA has to clear the device, for example, or the product, does the company understand what that is? Just having some form of understanding of what that path might be will help strengthen the proposal. The team, as a phase 1 applicant, we don't expect the team to be complete. Usually, I mean, it's not unusual for the team to be just 1 or 2 individuals at this stage, but if the team is not complete, does the company have advisors that can guide them along the way? And all these things, by the way, the team and regulatory path and the advisors to fill the gap within the expertise, those things are all important because the amount of money that we provide is, I mean, it's limited somewhat. I wish we can provide all the money that the company needs to make all the mistakes along the way and be successful in the end, but unfortunately, that's not the case. So having the team and expertise, it kind of adds additional assurance that the money will be used more effectively, perhaps, and minimize some of those mistakes along the way and help the company to get to that next level where they can continue to grow. And evidence that the demand exists, again, a company that goes through things like I-Corp, some form of customer discovery interviews, they tend to have a much stronger understanding of this. And as the company puts together the full proposal, this is where the support letters can be very helpful. If a potential customer or investor or strategic partner, if anybody's interested in the technology, and if a company can provide a support letter to go along with the full proposal, this can also help strengthen the proposal because it shows that the demand is out there. And if a company gets declined for funding, we don't really put a limit as to how many times they can come back. So companies can always go through all the weaknesses that we come up with and address those weaknesses and submit the proposal for consideration again. And in this case, if a company is coming back, it's always a good idea to prepare a 1-page resubmission summary. And this summary, by the way, does not get included as one of the 15 core pages that the company is asked to put together. And this will be submitted as a supplemental document. So the company would be updating the full proposal to include all the latest and greatest info, including some of the details that they may not have had before. And then this 1-pager that addresses all the weaknesses found within the panel summary, and it will be submitted as supplemental document. That way, when we go through the review process, reviewers will know what the previous concerns were and whether the company has taken the time to address those concerns. And if they address those concerns, I mean, this page can only help the company than hurt them, unless if they're coming back not having addressed any of those concerns, then that it can potentially hurt them. But if they address them and show that within the 1 page that they've addressed them effectively, then reviewers do start on a positive note. And there may be still some issues along the way because this is a different review cycle, but it's guaranteed to be a stronger proposal than the previous one because the company has pretty much addressed the previous concerns. All right, that's all I have today. And this is my contact information, my email, ahn@nsf.gov. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any additional questions. And now I guess I'll open it up to questions. So if we can't get to your questions today, feel free to email me with your additional questions, but hopefully we'll be able to get to most of your questions today before the end of today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Henry. This is great information. Sure. And we do have some questions coming in. Just a reminder, if you have questions and you haven't submitted it yet, you can do this on the control panel, go into that question pane and just type in your question. I'll read it out for Henry. So this first one is a 2-part question. The first one asks, can you clarify what incremental improvement means? You said something to the effect that the technology must be new and they don't approve it, it's just incremental. Provisional patents are already filed, then to some degree, the technology may already be in development. So that's the end of that question.
Yeah, and I think whenever I use that term incremental improvement, I kind of, sometimes it can be a little unclear, and I do worry about companies thinking that what they have may not be novel, and most cases, I guess, I mean, it's easier said than done when we say we really love disruptive technologies and we want to fund disruptive technologies. But if the company is doing something that's that other people have not done before, there may be existing solutions out there, but maybe the way that they use the product and the way things are put together, and there was a mention of a patent being filed, and by being able to file patent and be granted with a patent, I guess it shows that there has to be something novel about the technology. So when in doubt, you can always reach out to us, but as long as you're building some technology that has not been used for the purpose that you intend to use it, I think there is innovation. There's no doubt that that the innovation is there.
Okay, great, thank you. The second part of this person's question, or it's a different question. One of the slides noted that the government doesn't take equity. However, we understand that the government will have some rights on the technology. What are those rights, and do those rights prohibit SBIR grantees from ultimately selling to any government agency if they have the rights to use it? Might make selling to the government a non-starter.
Yeah, so I think it also depends on the agency as well. So NSF, what we provide is 100% grant, and none of the project that we fund will ever lead to what we would call a federal procurement. And we never buy anything from our company. We never take anything from our company, well, any intellectual property, and the data that the company generates, it doesn't really mean anything to us. We don't have any internal research and development. So for that reason, I think that's why we put a lot of emphasis on companies being able to commercialize and continue to grow as a for-profit company. But I think anytime you work with federal agencies and any new intellectual property that gets developed, I think it does have to get listed and saying, hey, we've used this federal funding to generate this intellectual property. If you work with the DoD, Department of Defense, for example, theirs is not grant, theirs is their federal contract. So that's a little different. They actually will buy things off of of companies that are working on the technology because they see the need internally. They want to be able to use that IP, be able to address a specific need that they have within DoD, and so that may lead to what people call federal procurement. And so I think having a federal contract, sometimes that can be significant for companies because you're actually getting additional funding to go along with it, additional money. And just because this specific federal agency is using it for their internal purpose, that doesn't mean that you can't use it to sell it to other federal agency, for example, or when you're reaching the commercial space. This federal agency, when they use it internally, they are using it internally. They don't do any outreach to the commercial sector. So the company can go out and freely offer the device or the product that they may have developed for those other markets that they intend to enter.
Great, thank you, Henry.
Sure.
Let's see, we have another question that asks, does the NSF view repurposing proposals previously sent to other SBIR agencies as a negative if they first make modifications to align it with the NSF's review criteria?
Well, I mean, as long as all the information is there, we have to be able to evaluate. So I would assume that some of the technical sections may be, there may be some overlap, but it definitely has to be modified to and to include all the information that we ask for in the solicitation. And one other thing to keep in mind is if the same proposal or the same project is being submitted to multiple agencies, if everything goes well and if the company gets awarded with all the funding through different agencies, the company has the option to go with one over the other. They can't do multiple phase one projects with multiple agencies if there's any overlap in the proposed work.
Okay, so no overlap in the proposed work is what the takeaway.
Well, you can still submit and be reviewed. That would be fine. But so for example, if I have a proposal that I know the proposal has been submitted to NIH, for example, if the proposal is in a strong consideration for funding, I will be going back to the company to find out what happened with that NIH proposal, whether they were funded or not. If they were funded, then I will be asking, letting them know that they can't proceed with both. And if they're not funded, I mean, we'll proceed to the award notice if the proposal is still pending. But upon award notice, if they decide to proceed with the NSF project, they would have to withdraw their other proposal with other agencies before being able to start the project.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
And this is if there is any overlap. Even if there's any minor overlap, they wouldn't be able to proceed with multiple agencies. But if there's absolutely no overlap, I mean, companies can still get phase one through multiple agencies.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. We have another question that asks, why did the NSF switch from having application deadlines to submission windows?
Yeah, so the initial thought was that if we work with submission windows, we'll be able to move a little quicker and perhaps get to the decision on funding a little quicker. When we used to have deadlines, when we used to have 2 deadlines a year, and the deadline used to be on that day, 5 p.m. local time, whatever that may be, it had to be submitted. If the company tried to submit it at 5:01, they will not be able to submit it, and they'll have to wait 6 months before they can submit their proposal to be considered for funding. But now, if a company misses that end of submission window, after 5 p.m. it'll close just like before, but at midnight it'll open it back up again, and the next day the company can just come right back and submit their proposal again. And if it comes in within kind of reasonable, within a couple of days of the end of submission window, more likely than not, we can still process along with all the proposals that came in the previous day. So it gave us more flexibility to be able to process a little quicker. And in some cases, if a proposal gets submitted, and by the way, these are submission windows and not deadlines. I know we have a bunch of proposals that get submitted towards the end of the submission window, but when I receive a proposal, say the middle of a submission window, because companies can still submit it then, sometimes I have a panel that's coming up that I can slide it right into and I can process it. Sometimes it ends up being even quicker than proposals that come in at the end of the submission window. And sometimes those proposals, they have to wait a little bit longer because I do have to have enough proposals to put a panel together. But the goal is to basically to get to the final decision on funding within 4 to 6 months of the proposal submission. So if a company misses a submission window, they don't have to worry about it. These days, whenever companies ask about their submission, I just let them know they can submit whenever they're ready to submit. Just let me know once the submission is made and I'll get moving with the review process. So more flexibility was the main reason.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
Makes perfect sense. Our next question asks, are NSF program directors open to communication with applicants after their project pitches have been approved? Yes, so if you have any specific questions, the project pitch invite should have the program director's contact information along with that invite. So you can reach out to that person directly, email that person directly, and if it's relatively simple questions, then I think email might be a little quicker to get the responses back. But if it requires some form of discussion, then you can ask to connect on the phone if that discussion is needed. So the communication and asking questions, those are definitely encouraged.
once the full proposal is submitted, we can't really interact with companies until the panel meets to discuss the proposal. So there will be a period of time where we won't be able to interact with companies right after the submission of the full proposal until the panel meets. But other than that, up until the time of submission, just feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next person asks, or they say, I'm a SCORE volunteer in Puerto Rico, and I would like to assist promoting that university researcher and business C-level executives become reviewers. To whom should he talk to develop this initiative?
Oh, yeah, so if, so within the SBIR STTR program, you know, we share all those information. So if you, you can just send me an email. If you can just go ahead and send me an email at hahn@nsf.gov along with their CV and the topics of interest, then I'll circulate within our program. The other parts of NSF, I don't know exactly how, if they're interested in reviewing some academic grants, other than the translational research grant that we provide within our division, such as IIP, such as the Industrial Partnerships Fund. So a couple of IUCRC and PFI, sorry. So those are the acronyms I couldn't remember. So PFI or IUCRC, I can certainly circulate within our division, but if it's through the other divisions within NSF, I don't really know exactly how to go about. You may want to contact their division directly, but any program within our division within IIP, if anyone's interested in serving as a reviewer, please send me an email and I'll make sure to circulate.
Great, thank you, Henry.
Sure.
Could you also just expand on that a bit to say what the advantages might be of serving as a reviewer if you're interested in being an applicant to your SBIR program?
Yeah, so one thing is if you have a proposal that's pending or if you've submitted a proposal, then it will be considered a conflict of interest for all panels. So you can't serve as a reviewer during that cycle. But one advantage is that you get to learn a little bit about what goes on during the review process, what type of discussion takes place. And I think seeing other proposals and seeing how these proposals get evaluated, I think it does give companies a little bit of kind of better sense as to what may be important, what they may have to perhaps concentrate on. Although we try to spell everything out in the solicitation guideline, sometimes I think it's sometimes kind of a little more difficult to see, and just seeing how the review process works, it does help the company to understand it a little better. I've had some reviewers that serve and then one day I just get an email back saying, hey, I decided to submit an SBIR proposal. So that's happened before. I've had some company that submitted the proposal, was not successful at receiving the grant, and after having some discussion with the PI, it seemed like that would help the PI. So there were some PIs that I invited to serve as a reviewer so that they can see what goes on a little better. And I think just seeing that does help companies to understand a little better. And even for companies, we have quite a few existing portfolio companies, the PIs of existing portfolio companies coming in to serve as a reviewer. And some of those PIs, they're trying to give back to NSF because they received funding through us. And some of them working on phase 1, serving as a reviewer for phase 2 panels. It gives them a kind of better sense as to what goes on with the phase 2, because it is a little different. $1 million project is much bigger than a $256,000 project. So the discussion is a little different. So they get to see what goes on, and it's in some ways it kind of helps them to prepare their proposal a little better. So that's also happened before. So it's just basically the comfort level. But I think I have many reviewers that are coming back because it's just, they find it very interesting being able to read about all these different technologies and learn, and then everyone pretty much learns along the way about the technology and about the market. So I think it sometimes just people do it just because it's interesting.
Perfect, thank you. I think it sounds like a great opportunity, so hopefully folks will take advantage of that. Could you also tell us a little bit about the NSF's Taba program, or technical and business assistance, if that's included in phase 1 and phase 2, and what that allows for?
Yeah, so that's not included in phase 1. But it's part of phase 2. If a company does go through phase 1 and apply for phase 2, Taba, usually up to $50,000, it's included as part of that $1 million project. And if the company needs to use the money to, say, better understand the intellectual property landscape, maybe your regulatory path to market, or maybe better understanding the commercial potential of it, or help raising money, and all those things can be used, like the Taba can be used toward those type of activities. And unfortunately, it's not part of phase 1, but all phase 1 applicants can budget a little bit of money under small business fee line item. And that small business fee can be used for just about anything that the company needs to use to continue to run the company. So if the company really wants to use some of that money toward some of these activities, they can certainly do that. But Taba is specifically kind of put aside for phase 2 companies as part of phase 2 award. And one other thing to keep in mind is Taba, it can't just merely be used to pay for fees. So if the company has kind of patent filing fee or those type of fees coming up, they wouldn't be able to use this money to just pay for those fees specifically. But if they're using a patent attorney to just better understand the market potential or the intellectual property landscape, and those things can certainly be used for Taba.
Okay, very good, thank you. And you were saying that Taba for phase 2 is part of the budget rather than on top of the award, is that right?
Right. So yeah, when we used to have, when the phase 2 award used to be $750,000, we had companies kind of submit Taba as a supplement up to $50K. But after we raised that phase 2 award to $1 million, Taba fund actually is kind of included in that $1 million budget. So it becomes a budget line item, more or less, part of the $1 million budget.
Okay. Sure, that makes sense. Thank you. See, I don't see any other questions at the moment. So I want to just give everyone a heads up that our next event through ASBTDC that's SBIR related will be on April 21st. It's the introductory SBIR STTR program event that I'll be leading. And so I'll have the registration link for everyone in that follow-up email that you'll get through GoToWebinar. I want to thank Henry for your time and your great information today, engaging with our audience. And this is wonderful, and I appreciate everything that you shared with us.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. As a reminder, we'll be sharing slides and the recording with you, so you'll have time to review and digest this information. And hopefully we'll see lots of new proposals going to the NSF. And
sure, that's great. And by the way, I'm a big fan of SBTDC, and there are many. Sometimes I interact with applicants, and they're kind of all over the place. And I see a project pitch. I don't have a whole lot of details, and sometimes those company or PIs, I call them directly to have a brief discussion, and sometimes it becomes very clear that they are really new to these things and they don't understand a whole lot about writing proposals or understanding how to start a company even. And I generally refer them to maybe their local SBDC or SBTDC and their incubators. So I think it's great what you do, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. That's a good plug for our SBDCs across the U.S. If you're not from Arkansas, by the way, you can find your nearest local small business development center on the SBIR.gov website under local resources. So I encourage you to take some time to find out who your local SBDC providers are. So, okay, well, thanks again, Henry. This was great. And it's always a pleasure working with you. Thanks so much for your time and all the information you've shared with us.
Sure, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Hope everyone has a great day and look forward to seeing you at our next event. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.